Amy Winehouse dropped the microphone. Not in anger, not in drama, but in something far more powerful: truth. The room, filled with some of London's wealthiest and most influential people, fell into absolute silence. No one dared to breathe. No one dared to move. Because what they had just witnessed wasn't a performance. It was a confession. It was pain made audible. And in that moment, every single person in that room understood that they weren't just dinner guests anymore. They were witnesses to something sacred. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back. Back to 3 days earlier, when a simple phone call changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in May 2011. Amy Winehouse was in her North London home, trying to find some semblance of normalcy in a life that had become anything but normal. The tabloids had been relentless. Her struggles were public entertainment. Her pain was front-page news. But on this particular afternoon, her phone rang with an unusual request. Sir Richard Branson's assistant was calling. A private charity dinner. Intimate setting. 20 guests maximum. No press. No cameras. Just music. The cause was close to Sir Richard's heart, a hospice care foundation supporting families dealing with terminal illness. They wanted Amy to sing. Just 2 or 3 songs. Acoustic. Simple. Raw. Amy's manager was hesitant. She hadn't performed in months. Her health was fragile. Her confidence shattered. But something in Amy stirred. Maybe it was the intimacy of it. Maybe it was the cause. Or maybe, deep down, she knew she needed to remember why she started singing in the first place. Not for the fame. Not for the cameras. But to connect. To heal. To be human. She said yes. What Amy didn't know was that one of those 20 guests was about to change everything she thought she understood about her own music. The dinner was held at a private estate in Hampstead. The kind of place where old money whispers and chandeliers cost more than most people's homes. Amy arrived early, as requested, dressed simply in a black cocktail dress, her signature beehive perfectly constructed, her eyeliner sharp as ever. But anyone who looked closely could see the exhaustion in her eyes. The weight she carried wasn't just physical. It was existential. The guests arrived one by one. Philanthropists. Business leaders. A renowned surgeon. A celebrated author. And among them, a woman named Catherine, 53 years old, who had received her invitation just 48 hours prior. Catherine's story was different from the others. She wasn't there because of wealth or influence. She was there because her 16-year-old daughter, Sophie, was dying. Sophie had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of leukemia 18 months earlier. The treatments had failed. The prognosis was weeks, maybe days. Catherine had taken a leave from her teaching job to be with her daughter full-time. Money was tight. Hope was thinner. But Sophie had one request, repeated almost daily from her hospital bed. I want to hear Amy Winehouse sing in person. Just once. Sir Richard's team had learned about Sophie through the Hospice Foundation. They made it happen. Catherine was invited to the dinner. Sophie, too weak to attend, would watch via a private video link set up in her hospital room. No one told Amy. They didn't want to pressure her. They didn't want to turn the evening into something it wasn't supposed to be. The dinner began at 7. Conversations flowed. Wine was poured. Laughter punctuated the elegant room. Amy sat quietly at a corner table, picking at her food, observing. She always felt out of place in rooms like this. Too raw. Too real. Too broken for the polish that surrounded her. At 8:30, the host stood and introduced Amy. Polite applause. She walked to the small performance area, a simple microphone stand and a guitarist waiting. No stage. No lights. Just proximity and presence. She started with, Valerie. The room swayed. People smiled. It was safe. Familiar. But Amy's eyes kept drifting to Catherine. She noticed something others didn't. The way Catherine's hands trembled slightly as she held her wine glass. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The way she kept glancing at her phone, as if waiting for news she both needed and feared. And that's when Amy Winehouse made a decision that no one, not even her manager standing in the corner, could have predicted. After Valerie ended, Amy didn't move to the next song. Instead, she stepped away from the microphone, walked directly to Catherine's table, and knelt beside her chair. The room went silent. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't scripted. "What's your name, love?" Amy asked softly. "Catherine," she replied, her voice barely audible. "You're not here for the food, are you?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "Who are you here for?" Amy asked, her hand gently resting on Catherine's. "My daughter, Sophie. She's 16. She's in hospital. She wanted so badly to hear you sing." Catherine's voice broke. "She's been listening to your music every single day since her diagnosis. It's the only thing that makes her feel less alone." The room was frozen. No one knew where to look. But Amy knew exactly what to do. She stood up, walked back to the microphone, and spoke directly into it. "Sophie, if you're watching this, I need you to know something. This next song isn't for this room. It's not for these people. It's only for you. And I want you to listen to every word, because I've lived every word. You're not alone. You've never been alone." She turned to the guitarist and whispered something. He nodded, adjusted his tuning, and began playing a slowed-down, stripped version of Back to Black. But Amy changed the lyrics. She didn't sing about a lover. She sang about fear. About isolation. About feeling like the world is ending while everyone around you pretends it isn't. She sang about the loneliness of suffering in a body that won't cooperate. She sang about wanting to disappear and desperately wanting to be seen at the same time. And halfway through the song, something extraordinary happened. Amy Winehouse stopped singing. She placed the microphone on the floor, walked back to Catherine, sat down beside her, and cried. Not performed crying. Not stage crying. Real, guttural, human crying. Catherine held her. The entire room watched two strangers share a grief that transcended words. After a long moment, Amy whispered something in Catherine's ear. Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. Amy stood, picked up the microphone, and finished the song. But this time, her voice was different. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It was shattered and whole at the same time. It was everything music is supposed to be when it stops being entertainment and becomes survival. When the song ended, no one applauded. Because applause felt wrong. Instead, silence filled the room. The kind of silence that holds weight. The kind that acknowledges something sacred just happened. If this story is moving you, subscribe now. What happens next will stay with you forever. After the dinner, Amy asked to speak with Catherine privately. They went to a small library off the main hall. Amy handed Catherine a folded piece of paper. "Give this to Sophie," Amy said. "Tell her I wrote it while I was singing. Tell her she's stronger than she knows." Catherine unfolded the paper. It was the revised lyrics to Back to Black, handwritten, with a note at the bottom. "Sophie, your mother loves you more than music. And that's the most beautiful thing in the world. Keep fighting. Keep feeling. Keep being you. Amy." Catherine asked if she could hug her. Amy nodded. They held each other for a long time. Two mothers, in a way. One fighting for her daughter's life. One fighting for her own. 3 days later, Sophie passed away. Catherine was holding her hand. And on Sophie's bedside table, folded carefully, was Amy's note. The hospice nurse later told Catherine that in Sophie's final hours, she kept asking to watch the video of Amy singing. She watched it 4 times. And each time she smiled. When Amy learned of Sophie's passing, she didn't release a statement. She didn't post about it. She did something quieter. She went back into the studio and recorded a raw, acoustic version of the song she had sung that night. She titled it, "For Sophie." It was never officially released. But Catherine received a copy. And years later, after Amy's own death, Catherine donated the recording to the Hospice Foundation. It's played in palliative care units across the UK now. A song written in grief. Sung in love. Preserved in memory. But here's the part that will break you and rebuild you at the same time. Among Amy Winehouse's personal belongings, found after her death, was a journal. In it, she had written about that night. About Catherine. About Sophie. And she wrote something that reframes everything we thought we knew about her final months. I've spent so long thinking my music was supposed to make people happy. Tonight I realized it's supposed to make people feel less alone in their sadness. That's the gift. That's the purpose. That's why I'm still here. Amy Winehouse died 3 months after that dinner. July 23, 2011. The world mourned a talent lost too soon. But Catherine mourned something different. She mourned the woman who knelt beside her. The woman who cried with her. The woman who saw her daughter not as a tragedy, but as a soul worth singing for. At Amy's funeral, Catherine placed a single item on the growing memorial outside her home, Sophie's hospital wristband, wrapped around a copy of Back to Black. Attached was a note. Thank you for seeing her. Thank you for seeing us all. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that empathy is the most powerful force we have. Subscribe to keep these stories alive. Comment below if Amy's music ever made you feel less alone. Years later, the private dinner recording surfaced briefly online before being taken down at the family's request. But those who heard it described the same thing. You can hear the moment Amy's voice cracks. You can hear her crying between verses. You can hear the guitarist stop playing, unsure whether to continue. And you can hear something else, too. In the silence between the notes, you can hear 20 people breathing in unison. Holding space. Bearing witness. What made that night even more profound was what happened after Amy finished singing. She didn't return to her seat. She didn't accept the quiet acknowledgement from the guests. Instead, she asked the host if she could make a phone call. Right there. Right then. The host, understanding the gravity of the moment, handed her his personal phone. Amy dialed the hospital. She asked to be connected to Sophie's room. And when the nurse answered, Amy said something that no one in that room will ever forget. Can you put the phone near her ear? I want to sing her one more song. Just for her. No one else. The room remained silent as Amy, standing in the middle of that elegant dining room, sang, Will you still love me tomorrow? A cappella into a phone, to a dying 16-year-old girl she had never met. Her voice was raw, unpolished, stripped of all the technical perfection that had made her famous. It was just breath and soul and truth. When she finished, she waited. The nurse came back on the line. She's smiling, the nurse whispered. She hasn't smiled in days, but she's smiling now. Amy nodded, handed back the phone, and without a word, walked out of the room. Catherine found her later, sitting alone in the garden, smoking a cigarette, tears streaming down her face. They sat together in silence for 20 minutes. No words were needed. Sometimes grief is a language that doesn't require translation. In the weeks following Sophie's death, Catherine received letters from several of the dinner guests. They all said variations of the same thing. That night changed me. I've been living my life wrong. Amy showed us what it means to be truly present for another human being. One guest, a corporate executive, quit his job and started volunteering at children's hospitals. Another, a wealthy philanthropist, redirected her foundation's focus entirely toward pediatric hospice care. The surgeon began offering his services pro bono to families who couldn't afford treatment. Amy's act of compassion had created a ripple effect that touched hundreds of lives. But perhaps the most telling detail came from Amy's own writings. In that same journal entry where she reflected on the evening, she wrote one final line that her family chose to share years after her death. Tonight I remembered why I survived everything I survived. Not for the charts. Not for the Grammys. But for moments like this. For Sophie. For Catherine. For everyone who feels invisible. That's my purpose. That's my legacy. That's what Amy Winehouse did that night. She turned a dinner party into a vigil, a performance into a prayer. And in doing so, she reminded everyone in that room, and everyone watching from hospital beds and living rooms and lonely places, that we don't need to be fixed to be loved. We just need to be seen. The microphone Amy used that night was donated to a music therapy program for terminally ill children. It's still used today. And every time someone sings into it, they're told the story of the night Amy Winehouse stopped performing and started healing. Because sometimes, the greatest gift an artist can give isn't a perfect note. It's a broken one, sung with a whole heart. This story is a dramatized narrative inspired by true events. It is a work of fiction for entertainment purposes only.